Ever heard that saying, don't judge a book by its cover?
Oh, yeah, classic.
Well, today's deep dive
Yeah.
really takes it to like a whole other level.
Uh-huh.
We're going behind the mask,
Okay.
of this seemingly normal guy
Right.
who was living a double life.
Interesting.
A man who people described as like a marshmallow,
Wow.
but who had this dark, dark secret.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, so we're talking about Brian Patrick Miller,
Okay.
also known as the Zombie
The
Hunter,
zombie hunter.
who
Okay.
committed these horrific crimes in Phoenix, Arizona, back in the early 90s.
Wow.
And our main source material today is this 28 Hours podcast episode
Okay.
called Unmasking the Zombie Hunter,
Interesting title.
which features all these interviews with investigators
Mhm.
and folks who are really close to the case.
Gotcha.
So it's a wild ride,
I bet.
And it just raises all these questions about good and evil and the
Yeah.
darkness that can hide, like right under the surface.
Yeah, like how well can you really know someone? Right?
Exactly.
Like anyone could be capable of anything. It's scary.
Totally. So let's start with the crimes themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
So in November of 1992,
Mm-hmm.
this young woman, Angela Brasso,
Okay.
she was riding her bike along the Arizona Canal,
Mm-hmm.
which is a pretty popular spot.
Oh, yeah.
And she was brutally murdered.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And to make it even more chilling,
Yeah.
her head was actually severed.
Oh, my gosh.
And they didn't find it for like 10 days.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That's horrifying.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, just the brutality of the crime scene itself.
Right.
And then the precision of the wounds, too.
Yeah.
It really pointed investigators to think that whoever did this had some specialized knowledge.
Oh, like what?
Like maybe they were a surgeon
Oh,
or had some military training.
yeah.
And the fact that her head was missing for so long
Right.
and then it was found and it was well preserved. It made them think that maybe he kept it as a trophy.
That's so disturbing.
It's a really, really disturbing thought.
Total nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
And then just 10 months later,
Mm-hmm.
another young woman, Melanie Bernist, she was only 17.
17, gosh.
She was found murdered
Oh, no.
along the same canal.
The same canal, wow.
Yeah. And this time, this woman, Charlotte Poodle,
Okay.
she stumbled upon Melanie's body
Oh, my gosh.
while she was out riding her bike.
Oh, how awful. Can you imagine?
I mean, the impact on the victims
Right.
and the people who find them,
I know.
it's immeasurable.
Yeah.
Charlotte was really traumatized by it all.
Of course.
And she lived with this fear
Oh,
that
yeah.
she'd be wrongly accused.
Oh, gosh, I can only imagine.
It's just heartbreaking.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Okay. So now here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The guy that they eventually linked to both of these murders through DNA evidence was Brian Patrick Miller.
And get this, he was known in the community
Yeah?
as the Zombie Hunter.
The zombie hunter.
I know, right? He even went to, like, sci-fi conventions, dressed up as this persona.
That's so strange.
Yeah, it's really perplexing, this public embrace of this, like, dark alter ego.
It makes you wonder, was it like some kind of expression of inner turmoil?
Yeah.
Or was it like a calculated attempt to deflect suspicion?
Right.
It's odd.
It's almost like he was hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
The people who knew him personally
Yeah.
described him as gentle,
Really?
kind, even marshmallow-like.
Marshmallow-like.
Yeah.
And he's out there, committing these brutal murders.
I know. How do you reconcile that image?
Yeah, that's a real Jekyll and Hyde situation.
It really is.
Like, it really underscores the fact that you can't always rely on your perceptions of people.
Yeah.
You might think you know someone,
Right.
but there could be these hidden depths that you're totally unaware of.
Right. Absolutely.
Both good and bad.
100%. So the investigation went on for decades.
Decades.
Yeah, can you imagine the frustration?
I can only imagine.
They hit dead ends at every turn.
Oh, man.
But then finally they got a break.
Okay.
And you won't believe this.
What?
At a Chili's.
It's Chili's.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Of all places.
Wow.
They desperately needed Miller's DNA
Okay.
to link him to the crimes.
Uh-huh.
And they came up with this plan
Well.
to get it without him suspecting anything.
Okay.
So the detective actually brought Miller's daughter along.
His daughter.
I know, to make the whole thing seem casual.
Wow. Talk about thinking outside the box.
Right. And it worked.
So they got his DNA.
Yep. They got his DNA from his water glass.
That's amazing.
I know. And that was it. That was the key to cracking the case.
Wow.
But then what they found when they searched his house
Yeah.
was another level of strange.
What do you mean?
So his house, it was a total hoarder house,
Oh, wow.
just overflowing with stuff.
Oh, man.
It took them days to go through it all
Really?
to look for clues.
I mean, do you think that environment, like the hoarder house, you think that offers any insight into his psychological state?
I mean, it's gotta, right?
Yeah, I would think so. It's interesting.
So the case goes to trial,
Okay.
and Miller's defense strategy
Yeah.
was fascinating, to say the least.
What'd they do?
So they argued that he suffered from dissociative amnesia.
Dissociative amnesia.
Yeah, meaning he couldn't remember traumatic events,
Including the murders?
including the murders, exactly.
Oh, wow.
And they blamed his violent tendencies
Yeah.
on childhood abuse from his mother.
Oh, so they brought his upbringing into it.
That's right. They even had a psychologist testify about his supposed inability to remember these events.
Huh. Now that's a pretty bold claim.
It is, right?
Yeah.
But the prosecution wasn't buying it.
Yeah.
They pointed out that he seemed to remember other violent incidents pretty clearly,
Really?
especially the ones where he wasn't convicted.
Huh. That does seem a bit convenient.
Right, like maybe selective memory.
Yeah, like was he consciously manipulating the situation?
Yeah,
Trying to avoid responsibility?
baby.
It's a really complex puzzle.
It is a legal and psychological puzzle.
It makes the jury's job incredibly difficult, you know?
Absolutely.
And to try to determine what's valid and what's not.
Right, and Miller chose not to testify during the trial,
Okay.
but he did give a statement.
He did?
Yeah, expressing sympathy for the victims' families,
Oh, wow.
while still maintaining his innocence.
Interesting.
But there's more to this story.
Okay.
So before the murders, it turns out
Uh-huh.
Miller had a history of violence.
Really?
Yeah, he even served time in juvie
What?
for stabbing a woman in the back.
Oh, my gosh.
And get this, he later admitted that he stabbed her
Okay.
simply because he wanted to know what it felt like.
Oh, my gosh. That's chilling.
I know, right?
That's like a total disregard for human life.
So
It's bone chilling.
yeah, and this pattern seemed to follow him.
Okay.
So after the murders, he married a woman named Amy.
Okay.
They had a daughter,
Huh?
and they moved to Washington State.
Okay.
And on the surface, they seemed like a normal, happy family.
You're kidding.
I know, right? Can you believe that?
I mean, but was it all just a facade?
Well, we'll have to get into that more later.
Yeah, this is a lot.
I know, it's crazy, right?
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
So, about Miller's childhood.
Yeah, you mentioned his defense team really leaned on that during the trial.
They did, yeah. They argue that he was abused by his mother.
Okay, so what kind of abuse are we talking about?
Well, according to Miller, his mother, she subjected him to physical and psychological abuse,
Wow.
even exposing him to, like, pornography and violent movies.
What, really? At a young age?
Yeah, very young.
That's messed up.
It is, he also said she would beat him with a belt
Oh, my God.
and constantly create this, traumatic environment.
That's awful, but is there any proof of this?
Well, that's a good question, and the prosecution questioned it, too.
Yeah.
But some of what Miller claimed, it was actually corroborated by statements he made to social workers
Oh, right.
while he was in juvenile detention.
Oh, right, after that stabbing.
Yeah, so he had described the abuse in detail back then.
Okay.
Which, it kind of gives his story some weight.
I guess, but I don't know. I'm still having a hard time with
Yeah.
how much his childhood can really explain all of this.
It's tricky, and the prosecution argued that,
Yeah.
while there might have been some dysfunction in his childhood, it doesn't excuse the calculated and horrific nature of the crimes.
Right. Like you have to wonder if there was something else going on.
Absolutely. I mean, attributing everything to his upbringing,
Sure.
it kind of oversimplifies things.
Yeah.
Like his fascination with violence,
Right.
the manipulation,
Yeah.
all that stuff might have played a role too.
So if we're not putting all the blame on his mom, what else could have contributed to him becoming the zombie hunter?
Well, this is where things get even more complicated.
Okay.
Some psychologists, they think that people with dissociative disorders, like the amnesia that Miller claimed to have,
Yeah.
they can develop these alternate personalities.
Wait, are we talking like multiple personalities here?
Sort of, yeah. It's a controversial topic,
Okay.
and not all experts agree.
Yeah.
But the idea is that these, sometimes they call them alters.
Alters.
They can have their own thoughts, feelings, even memories
Wow.
that are totally separate from the person's main personality.
So you're saying the zombie hunter thing might have been more than a costume?
It's possible.
Like it was a different personality?
It's one way to look at it, yeah. And I know it's a scary thought,
Yeah.
but it does kind of fit with,
Yeah.
how everyone described Brian.
Right. Gentle and kind,
Yeah.
but then also a brutal killer.
Exactly. It's like he was living this double life.
Switching back and forth.
Yeah.
But how do you prove something like that in court?
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
Dissociative disorders they're complex. And diagnosing them, it really relies on what the person is telling you.
Right.
So how do you tell if it's real amnesia or if they're just trying to get away with something?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's one of the reasons this case is so fascinating, It
Yeah.
makes you think about human psychology, the limitations of our understanding of mental illness.
Right.
And how do you find justice when it's so unclear?
It is a lot to think about.
It really is.
So the jury found Miller guilty of both murders,
Okay.
and he's on death row now.
Wow. Even with the conviction, there
Yeah.
are still so many questions.
It's a case that sticks with you, doesn't it?
It really does.
It makes you think about, like, what is evil? What is the impact of trauma? What makes us human?
Yeah, it's all those big questions.
And to think, this guy had a wife and daughter, a seemingly normal life.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath it all, this huge secret.
Right, and then you've got that stabbing in Washington,
Oh, yeah.
where he got off by claiming self-defense.
It's unbelievable.
It makes you wonder, like, what if there are other victims out there?
Oh, that's a scary thought.
It really highlights the difficulty of, like, identifying these people
Yeah.
who are a threat, especially when they're so good at hiding it.
Okay, so we've talked about Miller, but what about his ex-wife, Amy?
Oh, yeah. Her testimony was it was heartbreaking.
Ugh.
She said she lived in constant fear,
Oh, no.
always feeling like she had to give in to him, no matter what,
Wow.
just to stay safe.
That's really sad.
It is, and it shows how insidious domestic abuse can be. It wasn't just physical, it was like mental and emotional too, and she felt totally trapped.
It's just another example of, like, this guy's seeming one way,
Yeah.
but underneath, something totally different.
Right. So how did he do it? How did he keep these parts of his life separate?
Was it intentional?
I don't know. Some experts think that people like Miller,
Yeah.
they develop these coping mechanisms.
Like the amnesia.
Yeah, to distance themselves from what they've done so they can maintain some kind of normalcy.
So their mind is protecting them from the guilt.
Exactly.
That's kind of wild.
It is. It's fascinating and terrifying all at once.
So we know he was convicted,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels like there's still this big question out there.
What's that?
Could there be more to the story?
I mean, given his history
Yeah.
and how good he was at deceiving people,
Right.
it's definitely possible.
So you're saying there could be more victims out there?
There could be. Yeah, cases that were never solved.
Wow.
Or maybe they were dismissed because there wasn't enough evidence.
That's a chilling thought.
It is, and it makes you think, how do we as a society,
Yeah.
how do we identify and deal with these kinds of people?
Especially when they're so good at hiding who they really are.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
This whole thing, it's like something out of a movie.
Yeah, It's crazy how normal he seemed.
Right. Like a totally average guy, but living this double life.
And fooling everyone around him, it
Real
really
on.
shows you,
Yeah.
Evil doesn't always have to, like, look a certain way.
Right.
Sometimes it wears a smile,
Exactly. Yeah.
a friendly face.
And it makes me think with Miller, like that deception, that was part of how he got away with it for so long.
Oh, absolutely. If he hadn't been so good at manipulating people and avoiding, being held accountable,
Yeah.
who knows what could have happened.
Right. It makes you wonder what could have been done differently.
It's tough to say.
Yeah.
But I think this case really shows us we have to take all these accusations of violence seriously, no matter who's doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you can't let appearances fool you.
Exactly, especially when it comes to safety
Right.
and people's well-being.
I think you're right. And honestly, this whole case just really emphasizes the importance of understanding domestic violence.
Absolutely. Amy's story, it was so sad.
It was.
And it shows how complicated these situations are.
Right.
How hard it can be to get out.
And how important it is to recognize those signs.
Yes, absolutely.
And offer support to people who might be trapped.
Without judging them.
Right, exactly.
It's about creating a space where victims feel safe.
Yeah.
to talk about what's happening.
100%. And having those conversations,
Yes.
creating those spaces,
Mhm.
that's crucial.
It is. In this case, even though it's so dark and complicated,
Yeah.
it can be a way to start those conversations.
I think so too. So, I mean, what does it all mean?
Well, the Brian Patrick Miller case,
Yeah.
it really forces us to look at some hard truth.
About ourselves, about human nature.
Yeah, about human nature, about how evil can look like anyone.
Right. Appearances can be deceiving. And sometimes the most ordinary people
Yeah.
can have these, like, really dark secrets.
It shows you can never really know.
What's going on in someone's mind?
Right, and we need to protect ourselves
Yeah.
and each other
And look out for those signs.
from people who might want to hurt us.
It's a tough lesson to learn, for sure.
It is, but it's important.
And even though, the zombie hunter case is closed,
Mm-hmm.
it still leaves us with so much to think about.
Absolutely.
Good and evil, the effects of trauma,
Yeah.
getting justice for the victims.
It's a case that stays with you.
It really does.
And it makes you question everything.
Yeah, it makes you question the world.
The people in it.
Absolutely. And if anyone out there is as, like, fascinated by this as we are,
Yeah.
we really recommend checking out that 48 Hours episode.
Yeah, it's really well done.
It is. They did a great job.
They go into even more detail.
They do. And it's a really disturbing but captivating look at this whole complex case.
Definitely.
It'll make you think.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the unsettling world of Brian Patrick Miller,
The Zombie Hunter.
the zombie hunter. We hope you found it insightful.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
And we'll be back next time with another captivating story.
Yeah, we'll see you then.